Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining in today's exclusive webinar for our customers, wherein we are going to talk about contract discovery and analysis with Contractflow. So in today's webinar, we have got Vikram Chakrabarti, who is our product expert at Avenir, and we also have Mrunmay Desai, who is the customer success manager for the Contractflow and the various products Avenir offers. So with that, I would just like to hand it over to Mrunmay to start the today's session. Mrunmay, over to you.
Thanks, Maddie. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Maddie mentioned, we are here from the customer success. The whole intent is that we provide maximum value to our customers in terms of the product usage. A lot of times it so happens that one invests in a product, but then it is just somehow the value isn't coming out of it because there is always this challenge that the features are not known. So that is why here we bring the Avenir Live, our first webinar based on the contract flow, where our product expert, Mr. Vikram Chakrabarti, is going to enlighten us on some of the very handy features that can be very helpful in terms of the contract flow. With that, over to you, Vikram.
Thank you very much, Mrunmay, and thank you, Maddie. And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this customer webinar, and thank you for the participation. We are really happy and encouraged to see you all participating in this first ever webinar specifically for our customers. Okay, so for today, I'm going to, as Mrunmay said, the objective is to help you, get used to or understand how some of the features in Contractflow work, especially features that are not very well known, or you generally, when you start using a system, you tend to use a system in one particular way. You start having your favorite features that you go use again and again, but in that bargain, what happens is you're actually missing out on some of the small little things that can actually make your life a little more easier. It just makes it a lot more fun to work with the application. So we are going to take a look at some of those capabilities today, especially around how the contracts are stored in Contractflow, and how you can actually the various different ways how you can access and navigate to those contracts. Okay, so that's going to be essentially the theme topic for today. We're going to keep it short and sweet. And so with that, let's just dive straight into the application. So I'm going to share my screen. If hey, Maddie, can you give me screen share, please? Maddie, can you give me screen share? Okay, thank you for that. All right. Okay, so right now I'm inside Avenir's Contractflow, and a lot of you may find the screen very familiar. Of course, you may have a slightly different set of charts and graphs and dashboards that you're probably working off, but by and large, you might be able to easily identify and recognize this landing page. So when you log into Contractflow, all of you must be landing on this particular page. So you will have generally a graph here that shows you all your contracts by stages. This is a very useful graph that gives you the spread of all contracts across in the different stages as a contract goes through the entire journey or the life cycle, from draft to review to approvals to signature, and finally it becomes an active contract. So you actually see, over here, like for example, how many contracts are currently in the review stage and how many contracts are in the signature stage. Now, one thing that is this graph is very useful for is that in addition to the fact that it shows you a spread of contracts across the various stages, you can actually, once you start using this system, and once like maybe you've done about, more than 100 or 200 contracts run through the system, you will actually find that this graph will start telling you information about your process bottlenecks. And that is a very big benefit of this graph. So what I mean is, excuse me. So let's say, you're running contracts through the system, through the entire life cycle. And over a period of time, let's say 3 months or 6 months down the line, you start noticing that the in signatures bar, becomes taller and taller, almost like a Manhattan, skyscraper. And kind of like the one which I've got here, like the draft, the draft bar has really become the tallest bar here. Now, what that instantly tells you is that that's probably a bottleneck. Now, I don't know how many of you all have actually thought about it that way, but uh, when when contracts start accumulating in one stage and they're just not moving ahead, it's going to create that Manhattan skyscraper effect. And that tells you that there's probably something wrong in that particular stage of the contract journey. So for example, in my case, I can clearly see that contracts are entering into the draft stage, but they're just not moving ahead. Now, is that because of, is that a staffing issue? Is that like, do I have less people to manage these contracts, or, whatever that issue may be? Once I know that there is a bottleneck, then I can start working towards what's the best solution for it. Now, if you don't even know that there's a problem, like today, when you do your contracts manually, I mean, in the sense before you started using Avenir's Contractflow, when you were doing your contracts manually, you generally did not know, whether a certain your contracts are getting stuck at a certain stage. And I mean, the only way you would come to know is that if someone, suddenly hits the panic button and makes a big noise about it, hey, my contracts, I'm waiting for it since a month and I don't know what happened about it. Your vendor might be, sending you follow-up emails or things like that. And that's when you generally come to know that, oh, there is something wrong somewhere. There is something not moving. And so there's a bottleneck, right? And that's not a very pleasant experience. You don't want to know that there is a bottleneck when it's actually occurred. So this graph actually is going to give you that trending information. So as soon as you notice any one of these bars, like kind of, trying to shoot up, that should immediately give you a hint that, hey, there seems to be something wrong there. And so let's kind of look at it and do something about it, okay? So this is one thing which I really wanted to call out today, because I know many of you have just begun to use our Contractflow application. Maybe at this point of time, you've not run enough contracts through enough stages. And so you may not have realized that this could be one of the important benefits of this particular graph. So just wanted to make that call out. Okay, now, obviously, as you all know, the fundamental thing underlying the Avenir's Contractflow is the fact that it's a centralized, secure contract repository. It is secure because it's right within your ServiceNow instance. All your contracts are stored within your ServiceNow, and obviously, needless to say, it's the world's best in class, data storage and security mechanisms that ServiceNow has in place. And so all the contracts are going to lie and reside within that secure repository. And because it is a secure repository, what you could do is, if you wanted to kind of see all the contracts that you have today in the repository, you could just go over to the sidebar and go to the contracts list. And so here, you will actually be able to see all the contracts in the form of a list. Now, I know many of you may have already seen this. Many of you may be already using this list. However, I'm going to show you something really interesting here today, which I don't know, probably you may have not yet seen or noticed or explored. So right now I can see a list of all contracts, and in my system here, I've got a total of 655 contracts. But that's a lot of contracts, and these are all types of contracts with all different vendors. There's master services agreement, there's staffing agreement, there's NDA, there's purchase agreement, and they're in all different kinds of status, like some are in draft, review, there's one in signature. So it's a mix of all possible contracts. Probably not very helpful, because you're not really wanting to look at a mix of all contracts. You really want to focus and narrow down on certain types of contracts, as part of your day-to-day work. So there's a very easy and a quick way how you can narrow down your contracts. So let's say you want to see only master services agreement from this list, from this entire list of 655. And what you could simply do is just hover your mouse over the master services agreement, simply right click your mouse and click show matching. And there you go. This has immediately filtered out and narrowed down your contracts to only those that are master service agreements. Really quick and really easy and a very, very convenient feature. But this is not all. So you could actually do a further drill down search as well, filter as well. So for example, now that you have a list of master services agreement, but you want to only see the ones that are in review. You don't want to see the ones that are in draft. So you hover your mouse over in review, right click and click show matching. There you go. Now you have all your master service agreements that are in the status in review. And notice that now my count of contracts over here has reduced to 53 because it's actually narrowed down the search due to the filters. So it is reduced from 655 to 53 contracts. So I'm sure this is going to be a very useful feature. Again, I'm not sure how many of you have actually tried this or explored this particular feature and capability, but if not, I really thought that this is something that is very useful for you. It will really help you, accelerate the time spent on creating those filters, right? So it's a very, very easy and a convenient way to simply recursively filter out your contract list from the repository. Now, if you're wondering how this filter actually works, well, I'm sure a lot of you must have noticed this particular, icon here, which looks like a funnel or a pipe or whatever you want to call it. It's kind of, to me, it looks like a funnel, something that you pour oil through or, water. So it's that's basically a filter. So if you click that funnel, you will notice that it has actually built up that filter as we, right clicked and did the show matching. It actually built that filter. So you can see here, contract model is master services agreement and lifecycle status is in review. And that's how we got this filtered list, right? Now, if this is a filter that you use very frequently, if so essentially this filter is helping you create your own view. In many organizations, and this may be true for many of you as well, there are people who would maybe specialize in certain types of contracts, like you may be, working only on master services agreements. Your colleague may be working only on NDAs. Your other colleague may be working on purchase agreements. So you want to be able to focus only on your view. You don't want to see all contracts. So in that case, you can easily create these specific views. Like in this case, if I manage only master services agreement, this becomes my view. And what I could simply do is click this funnel and save this filter with my name. So my MSAs, you can give any name, like a free text name, and you hit submit. Now, next time when I log back into the system, all I need to do is come into this filter and click load filter and just select this filter here, which I'd saved my MSAs, and I will always basically come back to that same list, filtered list of contracts. So it's helps you create your own personal views to work with. Okay, so with that, let's now move on to one more interesting feature, which is, let's say you want to actually know what are the contracts that you have with a specific vendor, or if you're doing client contracts with clients as well. So And this is often a very common question that is asked within organizations. That often leadership may ask you, "Hey, can you tell me which are the contracts we have with this vendor? We need to look and review some of our terms." And immediately you're running helter skelter, to find that information, right? But of course, now you've got contract flow because you're using contract flow. You don't need to run anywhere from pillar to post. All you need to do is run your mouse to the left, go into the sidebar, go to the vendors list, and once you go into the vendors list, you would see a list of all the vendors. And by the way, if you're doing client, if your contract flow application has been configured for both vendors and clients, so then you'll be able to see both vendors and clients here. It depends upon how it's been configured for you, okay, by when it was implemented. So essentially, this is going to be a list of all your vendors and or clients. Now, let's say if I want to know what are the contracts with InFocus systems, all I do is click that vendor. And this is going to open up a vendor information page where you'll see the name of the vendor, some coding, numbers, address. And on the right-hand side, there's a small panel here that shows you all the contracts that you have with this vendor in one single view. So you don't have to really may take any extra effort to search these contracts. It's just available, served right here to you at your fingertips. Now, one thing that you will also notice here is that, so first of all, you know how many total contracts you have. In this case, in my system, it shows 82 contracts with InFocus systems. But it's also showing me all these contracts here, like in every status, like draft, some are in review. So you could actually use quick search to do a real-time search. So what I mean by a real-time search is, let's say I want to only see all the active contracts. So as soon as I start typing in active, there you go. So as soon as you type in at least the first 4 letters, it immediately filters out and it'll start showing you only the contracts that are actually the active contracts with with InFocus systems. So this is again a very quick and a very handy way to know what are the different contracts you have with a specific vendor or with a specific client. And one last quick thing is, for those of you who are doing contracts with your own templates, so this is specifically applicable to you. If you actually needed to create a new contract with InFocus system, you could do that right from here by clicking quick contract. So the advantage of using this quick contract is it pre-populates or fills out the vendor automatically for you because you're on the vendor screen. All that you need to do is obviously select the contract type, select a template, hit proceed, and essentially it's the rest of the process of creating the contract is exactly the same as many of you who are doing your own templates use the system today. Lastly, what I want to now cover is, so I've just shown you how you can go to the contract list repository and access contracts, filter out contracts based on metadata. We've also seen how you can access contracts by vendor. So if you want to know all your vendor contracts, you just go to the vendor list and you can see these contracts here. But let's say that there is a certain situation where, for whatever reason, you're not able to find your contracts through any of these means, which is unlikely, but still, and you want to run a full text search on the contracts. So you can use this global search box to run a full text search across all contracts that exist today inside this repository. And you could type in any word, keyword, phrase, sentence, half a word. It doesn't matter what you actually put in there. It's a full text body search, which means it's going to search through the actual content of the contract documents that exist in your repository. So let's say I want to search all contracts that have the word license in it. So all I do is type in that word license, hit enter, and now this is actually running a search through the entire repository. Now, depending upon, of course, the number of contracts you have in the repository, this search may take a little while, but it really does the job, and it really does it in a very good way. So you can see there, it's pulled up 228 contracts. You can see the results found here, and you may be able to identify this as similar to a Google search. So when you do a Google search and you type in a keyword, Google search results kind of looks something like this, where it shows you a little bit of the paragraph where it's found that matching keyword. And there's some information, though. So for example, the contract number, the vendor name, start date and date. So you could actually click this contract right here and actually go into the contract record. But one additional thing that you could do here is maybe 228 results is not very helpful, because you want to focus on certain specific types of contracts. So right now I can only see contracts that have the word license in it, but maybe I want to see only the active contracts that have the word license in it. Okay, so what you could do is, if you move over to the left, you will see a search filter. Now, this search filter essentially helps you filter down these 228 contracts further. So it's not going to run the search filter on the entire repository. The search filter is going to run only on these 228 contracts, and it will further narrow it down. So let's say, I want to narrow it down to only the active contracts. So these are all the various filters which I can use. So I'm going to use contract stage and select active and hit search again. And that should narrow down my contracts from 228 to whatever number it finds, which are basically active contracts. There you go. It's found 69 contracts. So this is the list of all contracts that have the word license somewhere in it, inside the body, and are actually active contracts. So if I click any one of these contracts, it will actually take me inside the contract record or the contract workspace, where you can see the contract information, the contract metadata, the contract template, and the fact that this is an active in effect contract. And by the way, I don't know how many of you have know this or realize this. Anytime you want to go back to the home page or the landing page, simply clicking the brand name Contractflow will always take you back to the home page, to the landing page. Okay, so I hope today's session was useful. We wanted to keep it really short and simple and just help you understand some of the basic features which you can use, some less known features. I hope this was a useful session. And as we had said earlier, that we would actually be conducting many more such sessions. So with that, I will end this presentation here right now. And thank you very much for being a part of this webinar. Really appreciate it. Maddie, over to you.
Yeah, Vikram, can you please make me the host? You right click on my, and there it will show you make host.
All right, you're the host, Paddy.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll just share my screen, and we can talk about the next topic, which is for the Avenir Live. So we are going to talk about which are the 3 or more ways you can initiate a contract from the Contractflow application. Okay. And with that, I would like to thank you again, everyone, for taking your precious time out, and hope we meet again, connect again. So thank you, Vikram, and thank you, Murmi. And yeah, let's connect in our next customer webinar.